mountain did not erupt over Yungay. It fell on it. On May 31st, 1970, a powerful earthquake struck Peru. High on Mount Huascarán, part of the mountain gave way. Rock, ice, snow and mud tore loose and raced downhill with terrifying speed. In minutes, Yungay was buried. What had been a living town became a grave under a descending mass of white, grey and brown. From a distance, Huascarán does not look like a killer. It looks majestic, white-capped, silent, almost sacred. It rises above the Andes with the kind of beauty that makes people trust mountains too easily. But that beauty was always holding weight. Ice, fractured rock, steep faces, gravity waiting for one violent moment. And when that moment came, the mountain did not need fire to become apocalyptic. It only needed to come apart. Yungay lay below like a town that should have been safe. Homes, streets, trees, church towers, ordinary life under the shadow of an extraordinary mountain. That is what makes this story so brutal. The danger was not a glowing crater in the night. It was a white summit in daylight. It was the kind of threat that can hang above people for years looking calm until the day it decides to move. And there had already been a warning. Years earlier, an avalanche from Huascarán had destroyed villages and killed thousands. The mountain had already shown what it was capable of. It had already sent death downhill once before. So when the earthquake hit in 1970, this was not just random catastrophe. It was a known threat meeting its worst possible trigger. The quake struck in the late afternoon. The ground shook. Buildings cracked. People ran outside. For a few terrible moments, the earthquake itself seemed like the disaster. But above them, the real killing force had already been released. A colossal mass broke from the face of Huascarán and began accelerating down through the valley system. It did not move like falling snow. It moved like a wall of pulverized mountain, dense, fast and violent enough to overrun terrain that should have slowed it. That is the image that makes Yungay unforgettable. Not a town burning, but a town being erased by speed. The avalanche was so powerful, it crossed natural barriers and overwhelmed ground that many had assumed offered protection. It did not politely follow one narrow path. It surged, climbed, spilled and buried. By the time it reached Yungay, it was no longer just ice and rock. It was a moving mass of destruction large enough to make the town disappear beneath it. Afterward, only a few pieces of the town were still visible above the debris. And that is where the horror turns intimate. Yungay was not destroyed from a distance. It was swallowed where people lived. Streets vanished, families vanished. Whole sections of the town ceased to exist under a single descending force. There is something especially cold about disasters like this. Fire at least announces itself. This came down white, grey and brown. Snow, stone, mud, shattered earth, and turned a town into burial ground in minutes. What happened here feels almost physically wrong. A mountain summit breaks apart, and people miles away die under a wave of rock and ice. Not because they climbed it, not because they were standing near the source, but because gravity connected the peak to their front doors. That is why Yungay stays in the mind. It makes distance feel meaningless. It turns beauty into suspicion. After a story like this, a snow-covered mountain no longer looks peaceful. It looks loaded. Visually, Yungay may be one of the cruelest landscapes in disaster history. A beautiful Andean setting, a magnificent peak overhead, and below it, the remains of a town that was almost completely erased. The mountain is still there. That may be the darkest part of all. The thing that did it still stands above the valley, looking almost innocent to anyone who does not know. So when you hear the name Yungay, do not picture only an earthquake in Peru. Picture a town under a white mountain. Picture people surviving the first seconds of shaking, only to face something far larger rushing down from above. Picture a force so fast and so heavy that it buried a town before the human mind could fully understand what it was seeing. Because this was not just an avalanche, it was a mountain turning into impact. And if Yungay was a place where a peak collapsed into a town, the next story is even more chilling, because the mountain did not stop at land. In Japan, Mount Huascarán helped unleash a disaster that crossed into the sea, turned into a tsunami, and carried death from one shore to another. In the next video, we go to Shimabara, where the mountain fell, the water rose, and thousands were erased between rock and wave.